And call for apologies and leave of absence. We have two tonight. We have apologies from Councillor Mark Sutherland and apologies from Brooke Southwell, who are both on leave. Moved Councillor Betts, seconded Councillor Tickle. All those in favour, we accept those apologies. Carried. Council, as we move into item 2 on the agenda, which is community consultation. We have potentially 4 speakers tonight, and I will call each of the speakers to the podium, and the first one being a development matter. I'll ask those that get called to the podium to speak to declare whether or not they've supported any councillors or staff financially in any political way. And I'll call on the Cody Group, Stephen O'Connor. Please come to the state your name and the item number to start the conversation.
Stephen O'Connor. This is 7.1, the development application for a childcare centre at Killala Lane. I have no declarations to make about political actions. Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors and council staff and members of the public for this opportunity to present to you. I just wanted to explain a little bit about myself to begin with. I hold degrees in town planning and environmental science. I spent 6 years as a commissioner on the Independent Planning Commission here in New South Wales, 3 years as the chair of Parramatta Local Planning Panel. I'm a representative on every one of the 9 district, Sydney district and regional planning panels in New South Wales. I spent 7 years on the national board of the Planning Institute of Australia, 4 years as vice president and 2 years as the national president. I'm here to talk to you about the 120 place childcare centre, which will be operated by Bright Steps Academy, a well-known and highly regarded operator. It has proposes a large open space area, over 800 square metres for outdoor play areas, and we understand there are waiting lists with childcare centres in the Tamworth region at present. You'll know from the report in front of you that there's been an extensive assessment process undertaken, and note that none of the council departments objected to this project. There were no external referrals. It meets all the state government and council's policies and standards, and has full compliance with Tamworth LEP 2010 and council's PCP. If I can just touch briefly on what I consider the main objections that have been raised for you. Traffic and parking stands out as the number 1 issue. And just deal with parking first, where we're required to provide 24 parking spaces. We're actually proposing to provide 32 spaces, well in excess of council's requirements. We've done extensive traffic modelling to demonstrate that all the Transport for New South Wales guidelines have been met in relation to traffic generating developments. Notwithstanding that, council wanted some additional works undertaken. A right turn bay in the Killala Lane and the restriction on right turn in the centre. We're happy to agree to that and to undertake those works if it's approved. Amenity impacts were also raised by those objecting. I think that mainly relate to acoustic impacts, noise from the kids in the playground or people dropping off or picking up children. We presented an acoustic report that shows full compliance with all the relevant acoustic standards. There were concerns about the 5 trees on the site being removed. We're proposing to plant 19 new trees to replace those in appropriate locations to provide shade. And finally, there was a concern about the removal of housing stock in a time when there's a housing crisis. There will be one existing dwelling demolished, but we think the replacement of that house with a childcare centre that has up to 120 childcare places in any sort of public interest discussion, it more than outweighs the loss of that one dwelling. We all know that particularly women benefit from the opportunity of entering the workforce if they can find appropriate childcare, and that generates more income for the family, and there's multiple benefits arising from that. As a consequence, we think there's a very compelling case for council to grant development consent, of course subject to the relevant conditions which the council officers have recommended. We don't object to any of those conditions. We'd ask council to support this proposed development and grant development consent. I'm more than happy to answer questions if there are any.
We don't normally have questions, so thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Second speaker registered tonight is Greg McNamara. Is Greg McNamara here tonight? Greg, if you could state your name, the item number, and then also make a comment as to whether or not you've supported anyone.
My name is Greg McNamara. The item number is 7.1 DA 2024-0058, and I do not have any financial connections to the proposal. Would you require?
You've not supported any council or senior staff member with political donations?
No, I have not.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors and residents. Thank you for the opportunity to address council regarding our strong opposition to the recommendation proposed under item 7.1 to grant the development consent to development application number DA 2024-0058. As the owners and residents of 63 Kalala Lane, located adjacent to the subject site, we are seriously concerned by the impacts of the proposed development on our property, street and neighbourhood. With only 2 access roads into Kalala, this is not just an issue that affects the residents in the close proximity, but rather the entire Kalala community. We made a submission to council in October 2023 during the public consultation of the DA. In that submission, we objected to the proposed development, particularly as it related to the poorly considered traffic and access design. We note that the amended access arrangements has sought to address the inadequate, non-compliant and dangerous traffic design proposed under the original DA. Despite this, it is our belief that the amended DA will too have a significant impact on traffic along the local road network. This has not been adequately considered or acknowledged as part of the council's assessment report. Anecdotally, we observe a constant flow of traffic travelling west along Kalala Lane from 7:30 to 9 a.m. weekdays. This traffic is often stationary, extending back 200 to 300 metres as vehicles wait to enter the roundabout at Campbell Road and Kalala Lane. Kalala Lane cannot accommodate the additional 168 peak vehicles trips per hour in the morning and the additional 140 peak vehicle trips per hour in the afternoon that will result from the proposed development. The proposed channellised right turn lane into the childcare centre has limited capacity to a maximum of 3 cars to queue at any one time. Considering the site's immediate proximity to the roundabout at the intersection of Campbell Road, any more than 3 cars queued to turn right into the childcare centre will inevitably result in obstruction of the roundabout and through lane, impacting travel times for all road users. Pressure on the existing roundabout will be further exacerbated by the requirements of all vehicles leaving the site to do so via left-hand turn only. This will require all vehicles leaving the childcare centre, whether travelling in a eastward or westward direction, to enter the roundabout at Campbell Road and Kalala Lane. This will include all staff, parents and carers, as well as servicing vehicles such as waste and delivery trucks accessing the site. Based on the above, we object to the claim contained by Council's assessment report that the level of service and the performance of the roundabout will not be impacted by additional trips generated by the proposed childcare centre. We sincerely hope that Council will re-evaluate the congestion and safety impacts on the proposed development on the local road network. It is abundantly clear that 72 to 74 Kalala Lane is ill-suited to accommodate the proposed childcare centre, particularly given its immediate proximity to the roundabout at the intersection of Campbell Road. We strongly object to the recommendation proposed under item 7.1 to grant the development consent to DA number 2024-0058. In closing, please understand this is not about opposing a childcare centre in Penworth. Clearly, with an expanding young population, they are required, but rather this is first-hand account of the problems which will be created in the current proposed location should the development proceed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councillors, we have two more speakers. I might call on Graham Carter to come to the podium, please, and state your name. And as this is not a development matter, you don't have to declare anything other than state your name and the item number you wish to speak to.
Okay, I'm Graham Carter. I'm with the Tamworth Water Security Alliance. And tonight I'd like to speak to two agenda items. The first one being the progress towards the purification facility update. And the second agenda item is the proposal for council to sell the land to Baiada, 15 hectares of land, to allow them to actually put in place brine ponds as part of their development for water recycling on their site. These two issues are intimately linked. The first point is Baiada has taken unilateral action to build a water recycling plant. That shows us that the council has got it right. It shows us that recycling is technically feasible. Don't be afraid of it. It shows us that it is economically efficient. Baiada is a profit-driven business. They've made a business decision. They can see a future from recycling. And that's telling us that Tamworth Regional Council has got it right. We've been at this for the last 5 years, talking about recycling, and now it's all vindicated. We shouldn't be sitting back here and going, should we do this? We need to be taking a step forward, as the actual agenda item talks about, that the state government is going to undertake a solid business case looking at how we should develop water recycling in Tamworth. That is a momentous step for the community of Tamworth. We need to be part of that as a community group. We need to be taking the community with us to show that recycling can be done and seizing this day and this opportunity that's before us. Looking at the Baiada decision, we should not be taking that as, oh dear, recycling can't happen in Tamworth. What we say from that is, this is telling us we're on the right track. We should be taking a step back, saying they've shown us it can be done. They're obviously saying, look, let's make it happen. Baiada is only one of the processing facilities in Tamworth. We have the abattoirs, but it's still going to need water. We have another opportunity. Tamworth currently puts the wastewater from our own water treatment plant to use for irrigation to grow crops. We have the opportunity to recycle that water, to resell it to Baiada and let them put it through their water purification plant, further reducing the processing industry's demand for water. My talk today, or my presentation here, is to talk about where we're going with this. We want to be part of it as Tamworth Water Security Alliance. The community has been calling out for recycling. There's a number of issues that need to be on the table and discussed if we're going to make water recycling happen. We need to look at the pricing model of that water recycling. Are we selling water too cheap to industry? Is the Tamworth community subsidising industry? Are we making it too easy for them to use town water? What pricing model should we move forward? And this is not a decision for Tamworth Council, because unfortunately, like we use the model, if we use the analogy of the supermarket duopoly, Tamworth Council, if they own a water treatment plant, will be a price taker. We have these large multi-billion-dollar businesses that know how to screw over a small enterprise. And we don't want that to happen. We need to be looking at what pricing mechanism, if we take on the idea of water purification for the council to run and operate and resell to these other businesses, how can we set a fair price that is not one where we're intimidated by those big business? Should we be seeing the state government a role in this and setting like IPART and set a price that's independently determined so we don't get, how would you put it, leverage, saying they'll move somewhere else, they'll take all the jobs. Oh dear, if we as a council increase the price of water, they can't make a profit. Sorry, they're businesses, they've shown and they've invested solidly in Tamworth. The council has supported them for years. It's only fair that Tamworth community be rewarded as part of that. An economic business decision to run a recycling plant is a phenomenal opportunity for Tamworth Council. We need to be seizing the day. As the Tamworth Water Security Alliance, we want to be part of that process. We want to help council achieve that. We want to be there to lobby for the council, and that's why I'm speaking on this part. We want to be seen to be part of the public consultation. We want the community to be taken forward, and the work that Bruce has done, the council has done, is great. But look, it's 5 years that we've been talking about it, and we're still barely getting there. The frustration from our group is palpable. The community is getting there. What's going on? We know the state government's got to take their time to do it, because previous business cases, if we go back to the failed Dungowan proposal, their business case showed finally that what they were talking about for 10 years was just pie in the sky. So we need a business case, but we need to be looking at this as something that needs to be done with the community involvement, with really tackling the big issues. Whether we need a state government agency to run water recycling across all inland towns is a question that needs to be looked at. And then I go back to the second point that I want to talk about, is the discussion about selling council land to Baiada to allow them to have their water purification facility. That's a cart in front of the horse. Tamworth Council has the opportunity to run water recycling. We don't want to make any decision that could jeopardise that ability to make money out of water recycling. And so until that plan for the water recycling plant is on the table, until we know the land needed, until we know the infrastructure needed, any decision to sell off a part of the land near the existing water treatment facility
Graham, I'll have to get you
Is it
the presentation to a close because we are
is a
limited.
detriment to the community. And we really need to think about it.
Thank you. Councillors, the next speaker is Robin Bird, also speaking on 8.1.
My name's Robin Bird and I'm speaking on the proposed water purification facility. I was stunned to read in Saturday's leader that TRC had lost the opportunity to produce recycled water for Baiada. However, the fact that Baiada is prepared to construct its own recycling facility illustrates the value of water and especially the value of recycled water. I feel that TRC must retain its focus on recycling water, as all inland towns will rely on this in order to become drought resilient. I urge councillors to take particular note of the section in Bruce Logan's report which says Council has some, it's page 2, Council has some concerns with the proposed on-site treatment facility to be operated by Baiada. This section has many unknowns for council and for the community. It also includes, one of the things was what would happen in the event of the treatment plant on-site failure. Would Baiada expect council to make up the shortfall of water required for however long it takes to bring the plant back into operation? This question, and many others that Bruce has listed, have repercussions for the council and the community. So I urge council to keep on trying to convince Baiada to use the proposed TRC facility. I also have an unknown of my own, along with these unknowns of councils. Are there just specific regulations for the use and production of reused water for Baiada, or are there now Australia-wide, statewide, industry-wide water regulations for the use and production of recycled water, because that's imperative? I haven't contacted council or the water minister this year because I knew that there was funding in the business with business case for the water purification works. And I know that business cases done well take time. I was also waiting for the release of the report from the TRC delegate who undertook a study tour on water recycling. So I feel that I've been in limbo. I am a member of the Tamworth Water Security Alliance, and I do know that our group has started, after our last meeting, sending out letters to ask for an update. But it's really imperative that we know now how we can help assist council to retain BIARDA. So we really hope that Tamworth does continue to pursue the water recycling project, because it will be possible then for Tamworth to have a campus which is a centre of excellence for water recycling. It would not only be functional, but provide tertiary education and research facilities which would attract academics, practitioners, researchers and students worldwide. Tamworth is unique as we are not only an inland city, but we're an inland city with no suitable aquifers, huge lakes or rivers to use in the water recycling process. So of necessity, our methods will have to be innovative. And there is also motivation to extract valuable elements and compounds from the sludge and brine, which will add to council's financial stability. I had more to say, but I had to cut it all out.
Thank you, Robin, and
Any questions, I'm happy to answer.
thank you.
And I must commend Bruce on his report and the patience he's used dealing with the government.
You can leave that with us, if you just leave it on the desk there.
Pardon?
You can put that there with Peter.
It's...
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, they're your notes, are they?
They're my
Yeah,
notes.
that's right.
Oh, you didn't want, I thought you said you wanted to leave them there.
No.
Oh, right. Okay, thank you. Councillors, we'll move on to, now that completes community consultation. We'll move on to item 3 on the agenda. That's from the previous meeting. Could I have a move and a second that they're true and correct record? Councillor Mears, Councillor Coates, any questions on those minutes? Any comments? I'll put that recommendation that they're a true and correct record. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. We'll move on to item 4, disclosures of interest. Do we have any disclosures of interest? Councillor Berg.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I'd like to disclose in item 8.2 a non-pecuniary, less than significant interest where my sister is on the committee of the gymnastics club that's part of this, and I'll be staying in the room and I'll be voting. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Any further disclosures of interest? Councillors, I do have a disclosure of interest in relation to matter item 12.2, possible sale of council land. I have a lease agreement with the said company, and I will be excusing myself from the room, and I'll hand the chair to the Mayor, Deputy Mayor Judy Coates. I also just advise that item, wherever it is, 8.1 is really a receiver note. There is no decisions to be made there, and the company's name is mentioned there a few times. Because it's a receiver note and there are no decisions being made, I highlight my interest, but because it's a receiver note, I will stay and participate in the meeting. Could I have someone accept those disclosures? Councillor Betts, second to Councillor Coates. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Councillors, we'll move on to now item 5 on the meeting paper, Merrill Minute. There is no Merrill Minute. Item 6, there is no notices of motion. So we move straight from there into open council reports and straight into 7, environmental planning, and we'll go to 7.1. Could I have a move and a seconder, please? Move Councillor Tickle, seconded Councillor Betts. Councillor Tickle, do you wish to speak to 7.1?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you to the speakers this evening. And this will be a 120-place childcare facility, which, as was already stated by one of the speakers, will help address the growing demand for childcare in Tamworth and our wider region. And this is a growing area, expanding area in Killala, so I'm sure that will also help many working families there to access childcare. As was stated, there are waiting lists at most of our centres. It is important to note that it does open at 6:30. I know it's quoted how the traffic volumes from 7 or 7:30, but it does open at 6:30. There are many, many people that leave their children at that hour, and I know, I live near one, and it's incidentally on a very busy intersection, and it's been there for 5 years now, and we haven't had any incidences, thank goodness. So the traffic management does work well there. So no, not at any given time will there be 120 children taken into the facility. And we can't assume that they're all going to be coming from the western area and that there'll be a queue on the Channelized right turn. I guess if there is, people have to go up and come back again. There's no denying it's going to be busy, but that's our growing community. So this, all the matters of concern have been addressed thoroughly, and as was stated, the traffic arrangements, whilst they don't seem ideal to many, they do satisfy the state government and the council's compliance and legislative requirements, and meets our traffic studies. So whilst to a lot of us it looks busy and it's not going to work, it does meet our requirements. So I will be supporting this, and thank you to the proponent for choosing Tamworth to build this facility.
Thank you, Councillor Teagle. Is there anyone wishing to speak against the recommendation? Councillor Mears.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I speak against the motion. Not that I'm opposed to childcare, because certainly we do need them in this region to assist families and children when they go to work. However, having spoken to a number of Calala residents and reviewing their objections provided to council, I take on board their objections. I've attended the proposed site both during peak traffic and during quiet traffic times. The issues raised by residents in relation to additional traffic and probable dangers of off and onto Calala Lane traffic and vehicles stacking to utilise the right-hand slip lane appear apparent. I witnessed a vehicle turning off Calala Lane into a driveway almost on the roundabout. This vehicle almost caused a 3-car accident due to what appears to be a lack of awareness from the vehicles behind that a car would dramatically slow to exit Calala Lane into or close to a property. My fear is a slip lane will exacerbate this problem. Turning right into the development can only increase the potential for collisions and slow eastbound traffic as vehicles cross the flow of traffic coming from the west of this development. In the public interest, in relation to what the public interest is, I've recently read the McKell Institute's report, having looked into this matter on a statewide basis. The exact ambit of the public interest is not well defined, making the provisions broad in scope. The only limiting factor has been placed on the reading of the public interest is the fear must have a rational basis. On that basis, I believe the rationale to have significant concerns regarding the traffic and my previous iterations regarding traffic safety are real. With the parking, if the centre is fully utilised with the places of 120 children, the development would need 21 staff working from approximately 6:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. And we already know there is a significant shortfall in childcare, so the possibilities of being full are real. If that were the case, there'd need to be also a shift change at some point during the day, hopefully outside of those peak times. The level of staff parking could inhibit drop-offs, causing further traffic congestion, or staff having to use additional nearby parking. It's also stated in the paper that addressing residents' concerns on property valuation, that it does not
come within the scope of council and is not considered. Surely with the exact ambit of the public interest having a broad scope, this can or should be considered. It is clearly a fear of residents based on a rational basis. The recommendation in the paper also says in the public interest of, in the developer papers, is the provision of accessible, affordable and adequate childcare facilities within the residential community has been considered as being in the public interest. With certainly no inference to the proponent and or any developer in Tamworth or the state individually, council has no control over the accessibility, affordability or adequate care of any business privately owned. I'll give you an example to this. The New South Wales government has recently or previously outsourced out-of-home care, which was previously foster care. One provider has recently denied direct support and or services to a same-sex couple. The government had, to my knowledge, no powers to intervene. Therefore, private companies in this instance certainly could not be compelled to adhere to accessibility for all residents. Based on the traffic and the location of the daycare centre, I think it's a wonderful idea, certainly much needed in the area, but as many developments come across the table, it's a great development opportunity, but in the wrong area.
Thank you, Councillor Mears. I'll have Councillor speak in favour. Councillor Beds.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. We are experiencing quite a number of childcare facilities right across the council area and indeed New South Wales and Australia, because we have a huge participation of young people in the workforce, and it's actually good to see, because we are a growing nation and certainly a growing economy in Tamworth. This facility, it meets all the planning requirements. I've read the report inside and out, and it meets all the planning requirements. And for that, we have to be very, very careful on how we sort of analyse and review and view these and vote on these developments. We had Gorman Street down in sort of North Tamworth there just recently, and we had that declined by the council. And we're in the Land and Environment Court, which potentially is going to cost the community in excess of $100,000 and maybe more. We have a traffic study that has looked at all the aspects. The traffic study has been done by the developer, by reputable traffic modelling people. But it's also been independently reviewed by the police, Transport New South Wales and Council's engineering and traffic people. And in all cases, they found that this model fits the requirements of that area. It has been put through the modelling program, which really analyses the traffic movement, and it's over a period of time that in no circumstances will it cause any major problems. Yes, there might be some small delays, but we're not living in Parramatta or centre of Sydney where we have a 3-minute delay here, and in Sydney you might have a couple of hours. But we are a growing city, and there's really, unless we put childcare centres out in the new Global Park estate, there's an industrial area, and no one wants to put children out there. We are going to have them in accessible areas where the community is. So, Mr Mayor, not wanting to put the community to any further pain with objections in the Land Environment Court, and because it meets all the requirements, I'll be voting for the recommendation. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Beds. Further speakers against? Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I concur with fellow councillor Mears and also the Speaker against in public consultation. It's all well and good to say it all ticks all the boxes. The problem is if there is, that's going to be a cold comfort to a family and their children if they are rammed up the back from vehicles travelling east that are exiting that roundabout. Everyone knows that lives out at Killala or has utilised Killala Lane at busy times of the day knows that that would be a completely inappropriate site for a childcare centre. Keep in mind, all around Killala there are new subdivisions and streets opening up with opportunities which would be far better for a project like this. And I look, as much as appreciate the developer wanting to invest in Tamworth, it seems to me that, I saw I think the proponent was from East Maitland and the speaker tonight was from Merewether. I mean, how much time do they spend watching the traffic impacts of Killala Lane and that roundabout? And I think anyone that's actually utilised it, whether they're travelling east or west in the morning or afternoon, will realise that this is a big mistake, putting a childcare centre for 120 kids in that location. And of course, parents turn up with not only the kids that they're going to drop off there, they'll be turning up with their kids that they're going to obviously leave and take them to other either schools or with them wherever they wish to go. But I just think it's a huge mistake, and I couldn't impact the people of Killala anymore. They're already frustrated with one access into it and out of Killala. It's made worse, obviously, during flood times, and I'm not going to actually put the people of Killala through this again when that's with a project like this in a completely inadequate site.
Councillors, further speakers for Councillor Berg.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And Mr Mayor, I'd like to thank the people that came and spoke both for and against the proposal to give council some more air in terms of their concerns that are very real to them. Mr Mayor, I'll be supporting the project. I guess one of the key things for me in helping understand the traffic issue and the rework that was done on it to alleviate some of the problems, both making it mandatory to turn left as you exit, but also the 3-car right-hand turning lane, which will give it safety, is that on page 32 of the report, table 3, it says there are 3 incoming vehicle trips will be generated every 2 minutes during the morning peak period. I'll just repeat that. 3 morning incoming trips in every 2-minute period during peak. I don't see that 3 incoming vehicles in the morning every 2 minutes in peak is going to cause a traffic hazard. And in addition to that, Mr Mayor, I think that we will find that the people that will be using this childcare centre will largely be Killala traffic anyway. It won't be traffic that will be entering Killala from East Tamworth, from West Tamworth, from Westdale, from South Tamworth or other areas. I think that I would expect, excluding staff of course, but I would think most of the people that use it from a childcare perspective will be local residents. So how do we calculate in where we're adding traffic volumes? I think we need to actually have a subtraction figure that's not included in these figures somewhere that helps us understand the increased impact. I've also spoken to residents out there who say, we live in a busy area, we live in a growing area, we're used to traffic. Some people that have moved up from Sydney and from other areas think that it's pretty damn good up here in terms of where we go with traffic. I clearly understand the issues that we have in flood times, and that's an issue for the island out there that we haven't been able to resolve as yet. But Mr Mayor, there's 86 conditions of consent with regards to this approval, if it's approved tonight. The 2 major concerns are the vehicles and the trips, and the second one is the staff. And as Councillor Mears said, a third one in terms of land values, but Council isn't able to consider land values in terms of our development application process, or else nothing would get done in our city. Mr Mayor, 14 submissions, people are genuine in their concerns, but we are elected to do a job on Council, and I think that a very much needed childcare centre placed in a busy growing suburb of Tamworth that I think is about 80 to 85% complete in terms of the development, proposed development that's going to go on there. And I can't understate also my fellow councillor Betts with regards to his comment with the Gorman Street that we did knock back, that when council says that a development is complying, that it meets all the standards, it's been reworked and rejigged to make it better, that we are in a position to not allow it or to deny it. So, Mr Mayor, I'll be supporting it, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to start by saying I am actually one of those residents who live in Killala, and I travel Killala Lane 6 to 8 times every day. So I understand the traffic frustrations that people go through. So, and I acknowledge the residents' concerns. And on speaking of this item, I just want to have my following concerns noted. Monitoring of the adherence to the amended design of a proposed left-hand only turn when exiting the site. I just have who's actually going to monitor that and what will be the repercussions if people actually go against that. The traffic impact study and subsequent modelling was done in 2022 and makes no mention of the subsequent housing in Lamparter and Redbank, which were given at that stage nearly completely occupied. Nor was there any mention of the upcoming Outlook subdivision with its proposed 275 lots. And I agree with my fellow councillors, most of the children, I would assume, as this centre becomes more occupied, are likely to come from the Killala area. But that would mean that there will be more traffic coming into that space. The traffic report conducted by CJP Consulting Engineers refers to bus services and also the Tamworth Railway Station and the role they will play in decreasing the impact of increased traffic. This may relate to metropolitan areas, but it really doesn't relate to rural or regional. It certainly doesn't relate to Killala because we have one bus service there and one only. I guess one of my other concerns is the safety of children walking to school along the pathway of the centre when the cars are actually entering and exiting. That would, and I'm assuming that there will be some management in place to try and alleviate any potential problems there. And one final thing, although it is very minor, but it did notice that the childcare plan of management didn't seem to include an outline of how parents would be notified of potential isolation due to flooding of Killala Lane, should that occur. So I think that's a very minor point. Also, I'm very much aware of the need for early childhood education centres and understand at the moment there are around 500 children waiting for places in the city. However, whether or not there are sufficient staff for all the centres being approved is not part of the approval process. With all that said, I acknowledge that this is a complying development in that it meets the requirements of zoning and the components of the state environmental planning policy and the aims of the Tamworth Regional Local Environmental Plan and Development Control Plan. Finally, I would like to foreshadow a matter arising around traffic in this area following resolution of the item.
Thank you, Councillor Coates. Councillors, we've all spoken on the matter. I'll just make one comment, and that is that, councillors, while you are challenged sometimes with some developments that you don't think are fitting in the right place, the only time that we can really make a change to that is with our zoning within our LEP. So the LEP at the moment states that this is allowable. It meets all of the requirements that are within the legislation. And within the planning guidelines. So council, just be aware of that when you make your decision on how you vote for this. Councillor, it is a development matter, and I'll ask you to raise your hands when voting. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Those against? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Carried. It's carried. Councillor Coates, you had a matter arising. Now we move on.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. What I'm actually asking for following this decision is whether we can have a review of traffic flow in that area of Killala.
Councillor Coates, could I ask you if there is a second for what you're...
Sorry. 1 second. Yes.
You have a seconder? Councillor Burke, you may speak to that now.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The reason I ask if we can have a review of the traffic is when you travel west to east along Kalala Lane, in the space of approximately 600 metres, there exists the following: a right-hand turn car entry into Carinya School, a left-hand turn entry into an existing childcare centre, a right-hand turn into Baronia Street for further Carinya School access, which is used a lot, or mainly by buses, a school pedestrian crossing, a roundabout, a bus stop on the roundabout, a right-hand turn into the proposed new childcare centre, and then when you turn left at Campbell Road, and this is part of the review that I'm asking for, there is an entry into a very busy Kalala Inn and an IGA supermarket within 30 metres of the roundabout and within 10 metres of each other. So I think with this in mind, I'm just requesting if we could consider a review to be conducted to see if there are any other measures that we could put in place as a council to ensure the traffic flow is at its premium, but also to maximise the safety to pedestrians and vehicle users in the area.
Thanks, Councillor Cates. Before I move on, I might ask our Director of Engineering, Peter Ress, if you've got any comments. I know we're doing a bit of work around traffic at the moment.
Through you, Mr Mayor. About 18 months ago, we did a traffic model of the entire city. We did that jointly with Transport for New South Wales. Since then, that traffic model, was done at a macro level, but certainly done at enough detail to identify spots in Tamworth where we need to focus in the future. I don't know all of them, but I can tell you that the hotspots that it identified, and the highest ones were Moore Creek Road, Tribe Street and Dewey Street. On that macro level and the modelling that they undertook, Kalala Lane as a major arterial will suffice, with the roundabout at Campbell Road, the roundabout at the Outlook and traffic lights at Gunnaganoo Road, which is part of the Gunnaganoo Road upgrade. And the traffic modelling shows that Kalala Lane will operate to the current level of service with those things in place for the future. Now, localised development, like a childcare centre or some of the things that Councillor Coates has mentioned, don't affect that macro modelling at all. If they're localised, then we ask, as planners do, ask the developers to produce a traffic study specific to that localised development and how it's going to impact. Any flow-on impacts from those developments are absolutely negligible in terms of the macro modelling we do on the city. It would take a major development like the one proposed on the eastern side of Gunnaganoo Road to have any sort of impact on on that macro modelling. Where we identify hotspots, if there's safety issues, Councillor Coates, that we would have a look at safety issues and how we could manage traffic around if there's any of those developments or ingresses and egresses are causing safety concerns. We would certainly have a look at that and see what we could do to do that. But in terms of the flow along Kalala Lane, none of this will impact that.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Ryder?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree that we do need to expedite at some stage a second access to Kalala, because if you consider the size of the Outlook subdivision and other subdivisions that are constantly being added to out there, you can see that Kalala Lane is at capacity. I mean, we shouldn't have to have suffer accidents and other issues along that road to have to do something about it. I think there was a perfectly good option, and that was from the Outlook over to Scott Road.
We're not talking about a second access, we're just talking about a review of the traffic that's there.
Yeah, to mitigate issues to Kalala Lane, Mr Mayor. That's what I'm talking about. And there was a perfectly good option over to Scott Road from the Outlook, but it would take some leadership from this council to obviously consider an option like that. But I do think that it's up there with those other roads, and I think sometimes the modelling belies what actually is happening on the ground.
Thanks, councillor. Further comments, councillors? Councillor Mears? You'll close the debate if you speak.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. As much as I think Councillor Coates's options for modelling the traffic are relevant and probably much needed. We've all just sat around this table, we've read the papers. Many of us have said the directorates have done a great job, and I don't dispel that either, or dismiss that. But we've sat here and voted one way or the other for the development to go ahead. Given the financial circumstances of council, if we pass motions of this nature, why should we then follow it up with further review? Because obviously the information that we got is correct and people's concerns aren't taken into consideration anyway. So I would support any measures to monitor the traffic and check the situation in months to come. However, just as a comment, if we vote for a proposal, why should we then follow it up?
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Bird?
Mr Mayor, I just want to say I second the motion because I think it has merit and it's worth doing. Thank you.
Further comments, councillor?
Yeah, look, I have been privy in this council to a number of reviews, and I know the review that the Director of Engineering was speaking about, and that was done by Transport New South Wales as well as our engineering people, and it was an in-depth review, and it looked at the macro areas, and I support what my fellow councillor Mears said. While it's a warranted thing to look at in the future, now it's been part of the study and it's integrated in it. We would just be putting extra work on our organisation that I think at this particular point in time would be better spent in other areas. So I'll be voting against it. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Tingle.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Betts. And actually, I had to have a little smiley because I know it's an entry to many things, but hopefully when people are dropping their children and their babies off to the childcare centre at 6:30am, that there won't be people going to Kalala Inn, and the same just going into the IGA. Sure, you'll have I don't even know if it's open then, but, you know, even if it is, you're not going to have peak volume of traffic going into Kalala Inn and IGA, and also, which was detailed in the report, there won't be, the childcare centre isn't open on the weekend. So again, from my observations, whilst I don't live over there, I do travel over there quite regularly. My observations are that the Kalala Inn and the IGA, it's packed on weekends, and that's when there won't be any traffic going into to this particular facility, nor will there be people going to work. They will be going to sport, but again, they won't be going into this facility. So agree with Councillor Betts, our resources are stretched to the limit at the moment. We don't need another study just yet. All those things do happen. They're all programmed to happen. Of course it will happen, but I don't think we need to request it to happen right now.
Councillor Coates, if you're going to ask for something, we probably have to be fairly specific about how you might ask for that and where it's going to go and who's going to do it. So I maybe make a little suggestion that if you wish to do this and that you're raising the matter, that maybe you ask the traffic committee to have some input into what you're thinking there. Maybe a comment from our engineer on how that might look.
Again, through you, Mr Mayor, I probably forgot to mention to the councillors that we've produced an integrated transport plan in conjunction with Transport for New South Wales, which is about 98 or 99%. There's a few iterations recently, mainly around graphics, but it'll go out for public consultation, public exhibition in the coming weeks. And council are aware of that integrated transport plan. We've had workshops with the councillors over that, and that looks at the model looks at the entire city. When I said we did the macro modelling, when it identifies things like Moore Creek Road and Jewry Street, we'll do further modelling, and that's currently happening on those three corridors, Moore Creek Road, Drive Street and Jewry Street. We're currently doing more in-depth modelling there to see how we can manage those corridors. But Kalala Lane is certainly not earmarked for any further reviews, because the traffic modelling that we've done indicates that Kalala Lane will service a fully developed Kalala. So every piece of Kalala that is developable, the model has assumed it's fully developed. and Kalala Lane with those treatments I mentioned previously will fully service Kalala Lane, and a second access from Kalala won't be required.
So councillor Coates, where would you like to take this?
Mr Mayor, if I could just clarify a couple of things. This was not about requesting another access to Kalala at all. It's not about doing more modelling. Okay, I understand that. It's about a very small local patch, 600 metres, where on a regular basis I actually see very often near misses. And it was more about, can we actually look at how the traffic moves in that space? And I'll give an example. You know, when the buses are turning right into Baronia Street, could we have a marked bus lane so that the other cars can actually, because not everyone understands that if you go to the right, you can actually go around that. Can we make sure that there's no parking outside the childcare centre that exists there now in the hours where it's maximised? They're the kinds of things that I was looking at. So I do not want staff to be involved in a massive review. It's not about that. I agree that our staff are already well and truly stretched, but it's more about how can we actually make that area a little bit safer with some very minor things, and I'm more than happy to refer it to the Traffic Committee and have them review it. So it's not about the macro, it really isn't, and I understand the traffic flow along Kalala Lane, and yes, I do understand that that's probably going to be sufficient for quite some time. It is more about a very, very small area that has some significant potential issues.
So councillor Coates, we have to have some wording to this, so would your motion then be that we call on the Traffic Committee to Peter Esch, help me here.
Mr Mayor, my staff are happy to sit down with councillor Coates and talk about the specific items she's just mentioned, and we'll pull those into a report for the Traffic Committee.
Are you happy with
I'm
that?
more than
Just a
happy.
motion for councillor Coates, if
More
that's
than happy with
appropriate.
that.
The motion that councillor Coates, I think, would like to move is request the Traffic Committee undertake a desktop review of the traffic flows on Kalala Lane in the vicinity of Campbell Road.
Yes.
So that's for that stretch that incorporates the intersection of Campbell Road.
All councillors understand that? We pay you.
And then it'll be up to the Traffic Committee then to
Yep,
determine
that's
how
fine.
to progress it.
Yep.
Well, we pay you the big bucks. So you happy with that, councillor?
that's
So you've
fine.
moved that, you got a seconder?
I'm happy with that.
Anyone wish to speak against that before I put it? I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Those against, carried. Councillors, we'll move on to 7.2, Northern Regional Planning Panel. Could I have a move and a seconder, please? Move councillor Betts, seconded councillor Tickle. Councillor Betts, do you wish to speak to that?
No, that's it.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation?
Just a question, Mr Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just who is the author? Do we assume that the author of this report was the selector of candidates for those positions, or was it someone else? I couldn't see.
I'm sure there might have been a panel. I might ask our director.
Mr Mayor, there was a number of staff involved in reviewing those nominations that came in, and it was certainly based on the matters that are listed in the report as to who was the most meritorious in fitting the requirements of the panel as outlined by the Department of Planning. So it was a staff panel.
Thank you. Yeah, I just recognise some of the people that weren't successful, and you know, I think sometimes it's good to have the benefit of a cross section of the community. One of them is a architect, and another is just a average Joe, I'd say. But you know, sometimes I think on such panels, it's good to have a good cross section of the community, and I'm not so sure that former councillors are always necessarily the best options.
Thanks, councillor Ryder. Any further comments? Further comments? Councillor Berg.
Mr Mayor, I wasn't going to comment, but I think at this point, I know we've thanked him before, but the outgoing member of this panel, Stephen Bartlett, I'd like to just make sure that it's noted again, thanking him for his services. And I think that we're very blessed to have James Treloar have himself re-offered for an extension. And I think it's wise that we've suggesting that's for another 3 years. And it's also a wise thing to have alternates if either Mr Inglis or Mr Treloar are unavailable. I think that's a very sensible outcome.
Thanks, councillors. It appears a number of people that are involved in the process, and there is a criteria for people that have put their hand up, the criteria that people have to meet to go through that selection process. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, you are correct.
Councillors, further comments? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Those against? Carried. Councillors, we'll now move on to item 7.3. Proposed road name. Could I have a move in a second? I move Councillor Burke, second to Councillor Coates. Councillor Burke, you wish to speak to that?
No, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that? There being any other comments? No other comments. I'll put the recommendation. Then all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Councillors, we now move on to infrastructure and services, and we move to item 8.1. Water purification. I will move in a second. Move Councillor Betts, seconded Councillor Coates. Councillor Betts, you wish to speak to that?
No, Mr Chair.
Anyone wish to speak against that? Well, it's actually a receive and note.
I'm receiving that.
So, anyone wish to speak against the recommendation of receive and note? Any further comments? Further comments on that? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. It's a very extensive report. Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah.
We move from there on to 8.2. Could I have a move and a seconder? Move Councillor Mears, seconded Councillor Rodder. Councillor Mears, you wish to speak to that?
No, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments on that recommendation? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Councillors, we now move into either the government strategy and finance, item 9.1. Could I have a mover and a seconder on adopting the Namoi workforce attraction and retention strategy? Councillor Coates, second to Councillor Tickle. Councillor Coates, you wish to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. After reading this strategy, and there's quite a lot of work into it, I think the collaboration between councils and other stakeholders to promote our region to new workers is an integral part of actually attracting and retaining those workers, and then ensuring that they get a good high quality welcome and settlement experience is also important. And I just want to mention that part of one of our council committees, the TRICAC, actually has been accepted as part of the welcoming cities that are in Australia, and that has a particular focus on migrants, but also the philosophy behind it in terms of people being welcomed to an area, being assisted to actually settle in and to be able to feel that they're a part of the community, can be transferred to any new person that moves to an area. So I wholly support this strategy going up so we can move forward with it.
Anyone wish to speak against that? Further comments? There are no further comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Councillors, we move to 9.2. Move in a seconder. Move Councillor Coates, seconded Councillor Berg. Councillor Coates, you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that report? Any further comments on that report? We'll move that item. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. We'll move to item 9.3, fraud and corruption prevention policy. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Mears, move. Second to Councillor Betts. Mears, you wish to speak to that?
No, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against our recommendation? Any further comments on that recommendation? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Councillors, we'll move to item 9.4, draft public interest disclosure policy. Can I have a mover in a second? I move Councillor Betts, second to Councillor Tickle. Do you wish to speak to that, Councillor Betts? Anybody wish to speak against that recommendation? Anyone wish to make a comment on that recommendation? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Councillors, we'll move to item 9.5. Could I have a move and a seconder? Moved Councillor Cates, seconded Councillor Mears. Councillor Cates, you wish to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Only just to make a comment that it's really good to see that council's portfolio continues to perform above the industry average yet again. So I think that's a good sign that our investments are doing very well.
Councillors has received a note, but does anybody wish to speak against? Any further comments on that report? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Councillors, we move from there to item 9.6. Councillor Betts, seconded Councillor Rodder. Councillor Betts, you wish to speak to that?
Just very briefly, it's great to see these community organisations get funding like this, because it really gives community ownership into projects. It makes them feel part of it. And I noticed that some of them, I know the Kingle Recreation Committee will be putting dollar for dollar, which really puts skin in the game, and that really has, as I said before, ownership by the entire community in that area. And the benefits that come from this amount of money is enormous to the community. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Further comments on that recommendation? Councillor Cates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Like my fellow councillor Betts, I fully support this and any other similar applications, because in my opinion the 355 committees play an invaluable role in not just helping to maintain their community-based assets, but also adding value over time with the hard work and the time they put into it. And they do this with their diligence and hard work, making both council and community very, very proud of their efforts. So from myself, thank you to these committees.
Further comments, councillor? There being no further comment, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. We'll move from there to 9.7. Moving to seconder. Move Councillor Mears, second to Councillor Rodder.
It's all right. I'll second that,
Any
Mr Mayor.
comments, Councillor Mears?
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against? Comments? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Councillors, that brings us to the end of 9. We go to 10, community services. There's nothing there, so we'll be moving into, or before we call promotion and moving to closed council, Mr General Manager, has there been any request for any of those items to be held in open council? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to see any of those items closed council now in open council?
Prepared a couple of quick words and approach council. Should take less than 60 seconds. Is that all right? Just make an appeal that one item in closed council should be discussed in open council. I'm sorry, I don't know.
You can make a submission.
Okay, just very briefly, thank you. I'd like to make an appeal that council consider item 11.2 in open council as any decision to sell land to Viata for the purposes of constructing brine ponds has the potential to impugn a future council decision on its proposed water purification facility, as already mentioned to it. Well, not mentioned, but the importance of this facility to Tamworth's future cannot be overstated, as there is no other major project on the books to improve the city's water security following the cancellation of the Dungowan Dam. There is no other option. Put simply and succinctly, water security affects everyone, which is why I believe the public interest in maintaining openness and transparency in council decision-making on this issue in particular overrides the public interest in preserving the confidentiality of information, which could put council at a competitive disadvantage in negotiations with Viata. Thank you.
Your main reason for?
Matter of public interest. Sorry?
Seek some advice on
that. So through you, Mr Mayor, councillors, you've not had one of these before, so just to let you know how the process works. Any member of the public can ask for a matter that's been listed for closed council can ask for it to be heard in open council. Council needs to consider whether the reasons provided by the staff at the start of the report relating to section 10A2, and in this case clause C, Because the report includes evaluation of land and includes a commercial land transaction historically and usually, council will consider those matters in closed council and make the resolution of council public. But it is a matter for the council.
Councillors, some comments. Councillor Berg.
Mr Mayor, the request was made for item 11.2, but there's no 11.2 being considered. I know he was referring to 12.2. I think we need to make sure that we're right.
Through you, Mr Mayor,
Yeah,
Councillor Burke, it only becomes 12.2 once you've actually moved it into closed council. That's why in the agenda it's listed under item 11. It only turns into item 12.2 once council resolves to put those matters into closed council.
Councillor Ryder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I agree with the Speaker that this matter should be in open council because we're discussing the sale of public land the people of TRC own, and they have a right to know what public land we are selling to who and how much, particularly in relation to the concerns in relation to water security and that land that would otherwise be set aside for the use of any future water purification plant. I believe this is in accordance with our focus area 9, open and collaborative leadership, and I do not see that discussing the sale of public land owned by ratepayers to one party for the purposes of Brian Pines impacts the provisions of 10A of the Local Government Act.
Councillors.
Mr Mayor, you need a motion from
I do.
Councillor Ryder.
Well, I'm happy to move that motion, Mr Mayor, that it be held in open council.
Now we've got to give him a second. Councillor Mears. So, further comments, councillors? Councillor Berg.
Mr Mayor, I really worry about what precedent this may cause. Closed council considers the sale of assets or the lease of assets on a highly regular basis. And although I understand the request with regards to, it's quite clear what we are considering, it's just that the amount and the way in which it's happening is being treated confidentially. I just worry about it setting a precedent. How do we then say no to the next request when we are selling or leasing council assets?
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Mears.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I'd like to support Councillor Rodder's motion, and I take on board what Councillor Burke is saying. However, where this is a single person buying something from council, it's not, I would assume, commercial in confidence, or, heavens forbid, and it's not an accusation against this council, don't take me wrong, but perhaps if that was in that business paper to sell it off for $3, maybe that is in the public interest. It's realistically the public land belongs to the people of Tamworth or the state, and they should be aware of what our proposals are if we're going to sell that land off.
Further comments, councillors? Councillors, we do sell public land quite regularly and we lease public land quite regularly, and it has always been in closed council for commercial reasons. As the General Manager has stated, that it's up to the councillors to make a call. And so I'll put the recommendation that Councillor Rodder put forward and was seconded by Councillor Mears, that it go into open council. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Motion lost.
Can we record division, please, Mr Mayor?
We can call for a division on that, yeah. Councillors, I'll now call for a motion to move into closed council. Councillor Coates, seconded Councillor Betts. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
We didn't talk about it at all, Mr Mayor.
That's good. I'll manage on closed business.
Mayor, councillor, councillor, to report of the closed session of the ordinary council meeting held on the 23rd of April 2024. In closed council tonight, you considered two items, both adopted as per the recommendations, with the slight amendment to item 12.2 to note that negotiations will be done by the Deputy Mayor and General Manager.
Thank you.
I'll move.
You move. Second. Councillor Mead, all those in favour?
Aye.
Councillors,